much would you guess was the cost of the most expensive construction mistake in history? $100 million, $500 million, try $13 billion. In this video, we'll take you through the 15 costliest construction errors of all time, from a $4 billion railway to a skyscraper that's sinking into the ground. Construction mistakes can have staggering financial consequences. Even seemingly minor oversights during the planning or building process can spiral into disasters costing hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars to fix. The stakes could not be higher to get things right. Let's count down the world's most expensive construction mistakes and see what went wrong. Citigroup Center. Now let's look at how one small miscalculation almost brought down an entire skyscraper. In 1978, Diane Hartley was just a young engineering student when she discovered a shocking oversight in the design of the 59-story Citigroup Center in Midtown Manhattan. The building featured a unique design with 4 massive columns, each positioned at the center of every side rather than at the corners. This allowed for an open plaza area beneath the building. However, Hartley realized that the engineers had made a critical error in calculating the structure's ability to withstand strong winds. Their math assumed the wind would only hit the building straight on, but had failed to account for quartering winds hitting the corners at a 45-degree angle. Further analysis revealed this was no small mistake. Quartering winds produced 40% more pressure on the structure than head-on winds. With this increased force, the building was at serious risk of collapse if a strong enough storm were to strike. The consequences would be catastrophic, with the potential domino effect of the tower falling into surrounding skyscrapers. Faced with this alarming discovery, the building's chief structural engineer Le Mesurier had to act fast. He convinced Citigroup to undertake immediate repairs, but to avoid causing a panic, the work was done in secret during the night. For 3 months, a crew welded 2-inch thick steel plates to vulnerable bolted joints throughout the structure. Since the repairs required access to office space, the work had to be done at night to keep it hidden from the building's occupants and the public. Estimates put the cost of the clandestine repair job at millions of dollars in 1978 money. But given the alternative of risking multiple skyscrapers toppling in a heap of steel and concrete, it was a small price to pay. The story remained secret for nearly 20 years until Le Mesurier spoke about it to The New Yorker in 1995. Today, the Citigroup Center still stands over Midtown, its brush with calamity unbeknownst to most who pass by it. The whole saga goes to show how even the most impressive feats of engineering are just one gust of wind away from disaster. Liang Star City. The abandoned Liang Star City is a chilling example of how poor planning and overambition can lead to a spectacular waste of money. Envisioned as a grandiose residential complex on the outskirts of Liang, China, the project aimed to house up to 5,000 families across dozens of high-rise buildings. But today, it stands as a ghost town, a desolate monument to a development dream turned nightmare. Construction on Liang Star City began in 2011 with great fanfare and even greater expectations. The sprawling site was to feature over 4 million square feet of apartments, along with commercial areas, parks, and a man-made lake. Developers touted it as a city within a city, and a prototype for a new mode of dense, convenient urban living. However, warning signs emerged early that demand for the complex was dramatically overestimated. As the first towers neared completion in 2013, buyers failed to materialize. Liang, a relatively small city of just 1 million people, simply did not have the population growth or urbanization rate to fill such an enormous number of units. Yet construction forged blindly ahead. At its peak, the site teemed with some 2,000 workers racing to erect over 20 high-rises at once. Towers sprouted rapidly, but remained unoccupied upon completion. By 2015, with dozens of buildings finished, fewer than 5 apartments had actually sold. The project's failure owes to a perfect storm of market miscalculation, reckless haste, and lack of oversight. Liang Star City is a textbook example of an investment-driven real estate bubble seen across many parts of China in the 2000s. Fueled by easy credit, lofty promises, and speculation, vast developments were built without regard to actual demand or long-term viability. For Liang Star City, the consequences have been stark. With a severe housing oversupply and no end buyers, the developer went bankrupt and abandoned the project in 2016. An estimated $1.5 billion had already been sunk into the unfinished complex by that point, making it one of the most expensive failed developments in history. Nature has wasted no time reclaiming the forsaken city. Trash piles up in vacant lots, walls crumble, and vegetation sprouts from abandoned balconies. Liyongstar City's only residents now are a few squatters and urban explorers drawn to its eerie, post-apocalyptic aura. It endures as a grim warning about the perils of overbuilding and poor planning. Sydney Opera House. The Sydney Opera House is an architectural marvel, but its iconic status belies the immense struggles behind its creation. The project was plagued by challenges from the very start, as its ambitious design pushed the boundaries of what was possible with the construction techniques of the time. When the Opera House was conceived in the 1950s by Danish architect Jørn Utzon, his soaring vision of shell-like roofs and organic curves was unlike anything ever attempted before. Bringing this revolutionary concept to life would require innovative engineering solutions that had yet to be developed. As construction began in 1959, it quickly became apparent that Utzon's blueprints lacked many critical details on how the complex structures would actually be built. The Opera House's most distinctive feature, its nested, sail-like roof shells, proved to be an engineering nightmare. Utzon had envisioned the shells being cast as smooth concrete domes, but the available construction methods could not produce the precision curves he demanded at such a scale. After 3 years of futile experimentation, Utzon was forced to completely rethink the design. His solution was to compose the shells from precast concrete ribs arranged in a spherical geometry. While this approach made construction feasible, it also required scrapping years of work and starting over almost from scratch. The abrupt redesign was a major factor behind the project timeline, stretching from an initial estimate of 4 years to a staggering 14 years. As the Opera House's completion date retreated further into the future, so too did its budget balloon beyond all expectations. A project originally slated to cost $7 million AUD ended up devouring over $102 million by the time it was finished in 1973. A nearly 15-fold cost overrun. The price tag made it one of the most expensive buildings of its era. Amidst the delays and cost blowouts, tensions reached a breaking point between Utzon and the government officials overseeing the project. Frustrated by the constant design changes and perceived lack of financial management, the Minister of Works, Davis Hughes, began to exclude Utzon from decision-making. Their battle culminated in Utzon's dramatic resignation in 1966 as he declared the situation intolerable. He left Australia, never returning to see his masterpiece completed. Stuttgart 21, Germany's problematic railway. But while the Sydney Opera House ultimately triumphed over adversity, the fate of Germany's largest rail project remains much more uncertain. Stuttgart 21 is an audacious plan to modernize the city of Stuttgart's central train station by turning it from a dead-end terminal into an underground through station. However, the project has become a quagmire of delays, cost overruns, and controversies that threaten to derail it entirely. From its inception in the mid-1990s, Stuttgart 21 was touted as a visionary upgrade that would speed up rail travel, free up valuable city space, and bolster Stuttgart's economic prospects. The original budget was set at $2.5 billion with a completion date of 2008. But as the true scale and complexity of the undertaking became apparent, those initial projections quickly went off track. One of the biggest engineering challenges has been the extensive tunnel drilling required. Stuttgart sits in a basin surrounded by hills, necessitating over 60 kilometers of new tunnels to thread the railway through the difficult topography. Unstable groundwater conditions and the presence of swelling and hydrite rock have made the tunneling process far slower and costlier than anticipated. Environmental concerns have also dogged the project. Stuttgart 21 requires the felling of hundreds of old trees in the city center, which sparked fierce protests and accusations of ecological destruction. The discovery of a protected species of lizard living in the construction zone caused further delays and outcry. As the problems mounted, so too did the price tag. By 2009, the budget had ballooned to $4.1 billion. In 2013, it jumped to $6.5 billion. The latest estimates put the total cost at an eye-watering $8.2 billion, more than triple the original figure. The completion date has also been pushed back repeatedly, with the most recent target being 2025. The ever-escalating costs have turned public opinion sharply against the project. Many Stuttgart residents see it as a boondoggle that is siphoning away funds from more pressing needs. In 2011, over 100,000 people took to the streets to protest Stuttgart 21, leading to clashes with police and hundreds of injuries. Despite the backlash, the state government has remained committed to seeing Stuttgart 21 through. Proponents argue that stopping the project now would be even more wasteful than finishing it, given that over $3 billion has already been spent. They maintain that the long-term benefits will be worth the short-term pain. As of 2024, construction on Stuttgart 21 continues, albeit at a snail's pace. The final outcome remains uncertain. Will it be an ultimate vindication of bold infrastructure investment, or an albatross that cripples local finances for decades? Only time will tell. Oroville Dam failure. The near catastrophe at the Oroville Dam in 2017 underscores the hidden dangers that can lurk within even the most robust infrastructure. As the tallest dam in the United States at 770 feet, Oroville was considered a marvel of engineering when it was completed in 1968. But decades of wear, tear, and deferred maintenance set the stage for a crisis that would put the lives of nearly 200,000 people at risk. In February 2017, a series of massive rainstorms dumped over a foot of precipitation onto the Oroville Dam's watershed. As the reservoir swelled to capacity, operators were forced to release water down the dam's main spillway to prevent overtopping. However, on February 7th, a gaping hole unexpectedly opened up in the concrete spillway, causing extensive damage and rendering it unusable. With the main spillway out of commission, dam managers turned to the earthen emergency spillway as a last resort. But this structure, which had never been used in the dam's history, quickly began to erode under the force of the cascading water. There were fears that the entire emergency spillway could collapse, unleashing a 30-foot wall of water that would race downstream toward the towns below. On February 12th, with the situation rapidly deteriorating, authorities made the unprecedented decision to order the immediate evacuation of nearly 200,000 people living in the potential flood zone. Residents were given just a few hours to pack their belongings and flee to higher ground, causing widespread panic and gridlock on the roads. Fortunately, dam workers were able to make emergency repairs and reinforce the spillways enough to prevent a full-scale failure. The emergency evacuation order was lifted after 2 days, but the close call left many shaken and outraged. Investigations revealed that problems with Oroville's spillways had been identified years earlier, but necessary repairs were never made due to funding shortfalls and bureaucratic inertia. The costs of this deferred maintenance have been staggering. Repairing the damage to Oroville's spillways has cost over $1.1 billion so far, making it one of the most expensive dam fixes in U.S. history. The bulk of these repair costs are being borne by California taxpayers, as well as local water agencies that rely on the reservoir for irrigation and drinking water. But the true price of the Oroville Dam crisis goes far beyond the financial toll. The near-miss shattered public faith in the safety of the state's aging water infrastructure. It also raised troubling questions about the ability of dams to withstand the more frequent and intense rainfall events expected with climate change. Tacoma Narrows Bridge. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge, spanning the Puget Sound in Washington state, became infamous not for its successful completion, but for its dramatic collapse just 4 months after opening. When it was built in 1940, the Tacoma Narrows was the third longest suspension bridge in the world, stretching 2,800 feet. Its sleek, modern design featured a roadbed only 39 feet wide, which was less than half the width of comparable bridges at the time. This narrow profile, combined with an unusually shallow structural depth, would prove to be the bridge's undoing. The designers had drastically underestimated the effect of wind forces on the slender span. On November 7, 1940, sustained 40-mile winds whipped the bridge into a series of increasingly violent oscillations. The undulations started as a rhythmic rippling motion, earning the bridge its nickname Galloping Gertie. But as gusts continued to pummel the span, the twisting grew more severe. The roadbed began tilting back and forth at angles of up to 45 degrees. At one point, a 600-foot section at the center rose and fell by as much as 28 feet. Motorists caught on the heaving span abandoned their vehicles and crawled on hands and knees to reach solid ground. The last person to make it off was a newspaper editor named Leonard Coatsworth, who was forced to leave his terrified Cocker Spaniel behind in his car. After hours of intense oscillations, a 600-foot section of the main span tore free and collapsed into the churning waters below. 10 minutes later, another 1,100 feet of roadway broke apart and plunged into the Narrows. In just a few hours, what had been a proud engineering achievement became a twisted wreck of steel and concrete. The failure of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge sent shockwaves through the engineering world. Subsequent investigations revealed that the bridge's designers had greatly miscalculated the structure's aerodynamic forces. The narrow, shallow roadbed was essentially acting like an airplane wing, generating lift and oscillations in high winds. This phenomenon, known as aeroelastic flutter, was not well understood at the time the Tacoma Narrows was designed. In fact, the bridge's engineer, Leon Moiseev, had confidently declared that the span could withstand winds of up to 120 mph. His assurances proved tragically mistaken. The bridge's collapse carried a hefty price tag. Its construction had cost $6.4 million, equivalent to about $120 million today. The loss of this investment, combined with the costs of demolishing the wreckage and building a replacement bridge, total led to financial losses in the tens of millions. But perhaps the most enduring cost was to the reputation of suspension bridge design itself. The Tacoma Narrows failure shattered public confidence in the safety of these soaring spans. It would be years before another major suspension bridge was attempted in the United States. Mexico City Texcoco Airport. The ghostly shells of half-finished terminals and the cracked tarmac of abandoned runways stand as a testament to one of the most expensive construction reversals in recent memory: the scrapping of Mexico City's partially built Texcoco Airport. This $13 billion mega-project, intended to replace the city's aging and overcrowded Benito Juarez International Airport, was canceled in 2018 after construction had already begun, leaving behind a costly and controversial legacy. The Texcoco Airport was envisioned as a gleaming, state-of-the-art hub that would boost Mexico's economy and transform the capital into a major international transit point. With an initial price tag of $9 billion, it was slated to have 3 runways, a sprawling terminal complex, and capacity for 120 million passengers per year, 4 times that of the existing airport. Construction kicked off in 2015 on a vast stretch of federally owned land on the bed of the drained Texcoco Lake. The soggy soil posed significant engineering challenges, requiring extensive ground stabilization and complex foundation work. But the project's champions, including then-President Enrique Peña Nieto, were undeterred, insisting that the new airport was essential for Mexico's growth. However, the tide began to turn against Texcoco in 2018 with the election of a new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, a left-wing populist. López Obrador had campaigned against the airport, decrying it as a wasteful boondoggle that would primarily benefit the wealthy. He vowed to scrap the project if elected and instead focus on upgrading existing airports. After taking office, López Obrador made good on his promise. In a highly controversial referendum marred by low turnout, a majority voted to halt construction at Texcoco and pursue the alternative plan. And just like that, a project that was already 1/3 complete was consigned to the scrap heap. The financial fallout was swift and severe. The Mexican government was forced to pay out billions in compensation to bondholders and contractors. The total cost of the cancellation, including the money already sunk into construction, is estimated at around $5 billion, a staggering sum for a country already grappling with economic challenges. But the true price of the Texcoco debacle may be even higher in terms of lost economic potential and reputational damage. The abandoned construction site has become a symbol of waste and dysfunction, a cautionary tale about the perils of shifting political winds. California High-Speed Rail. The California High-Speed Rail project, envisioned as a futuristic transportation solution whisking passengers from Los Angeles to San Francisco in under 3 hours, has instead become a poster child for cost overruns, delays, and mismanagement. Since its inception in 2008, this ambitious plan to bring bullet trains to the Golden State has been plagued by a litany of setbacks that have turned it into one of the most expensive infrastructure quagmires in US history. The seeds of the high-speed rail's troubles were sown from the start with unrealistic cost and timeline projections. The initial estimate of $33 billion for the entire 800-mile system was based on highly optimistic assumptions that quickly unraveled in the face of engineering realities. Building the new tracks through California's mountainous terrain, seismically active fault zones, and dense urban areas proved far more complex and costly than anticipated. As construction inched forward at a snail's pace, the project's price tag ballooned dizzyingly. By 2018, the estimated cost had more than doubled to $77 billion. Just 2 years later, it jumped again to over $100 billion. A more than threefold increase from the original budget. The ever-rising costs triggered a cascade of consequences. Federal and private funding that was contingent on the project hitting certain milestones evaporated as deadlines were repeatedly missed. Political support for the rail line eroded as the public grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of tangible progress. Oversight reports revealed a litany of management failures, from poor contract supervision to lax cost controls. Desperate to show some results, rail authority officials prioritized a 119-mile starter segment in the state's Central Valley, far from the major population centers. But even this relatively straightforward stretch through flat farmland has been beset by construction defects, land acquisition battles, and environmental lawsuits. Meanwhile, the completion date for the full Los Angeles to San Francisco line has receded like a mirage into the distant future. The original target of 2020 was pushed back to 2033, and even that date is now considered highly optimistic. Vdara Hotel Las Vegas. From a rail project gone off the tracks in California, we now head to the shimmering desert mirage of Las Vegas, where a sleek curvilinear hotel inadvertently created its own death ray. The Vdara Hotel and Spa, part of the $8.5 billion city center complex, dazzled guests with its gleaming glass facade and sweeping views of the Strip. But shortly after its opening in 2009, the hotel gained notoriety for an unexpected and alarming reason. The Vdara's crescent-shaped design, while striking, had an unintended consequence. The concave glass surface essentially acted as a giant parabolic reflector, concentrating and magnifying the intense desert sunlight. For a period of about 90 minutes each day, this death ray would beam down onto the pool area, heating up surfaces to an astonishing 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Guests lounging by the pool reported feeling a sudden searing sensation, as if they were being microwaved. Plastic cups and bags melted, hair was singed, and some even suffered burns. One unfortunate guest, in a literally blistering review on TripAdvisor, described the feeling as like when you burn your behind on a hot car seat. Hotel employees, armed with umbrellas, would patrol the pool deck during the danger period, warning guests to take cover. Signs were hastily erected, cautioning visitors of the hot rays and advising them to seek shade. The international media had a field day, dubbing the phenomenon the Las Vegas Death Ray and the skyscraper. The source of the problem lay in the Vdara's distinctive architecture. Its curved glass exterior, designed by the renowned Raphael Vignoli, was meant to evoke a crescent moon, but the concavity of this reflective surface inadvertently concentrated the sun's rays like a magnifying glass. It was an issue of physics that the architects had failed to fully anticipate and account for. To address the searing situation, the Vdara was forced to take corrective measures. High-tech solar coating and anti-reflective film were applied to the problematic glass panels to diffuse the concentrated sunlight. Rows of poolside umbrellas were strategically installed to create shaded zones during peak sun hours. While these retrofits successfully mitigated the death ray effect, they came at a significant cost. The exact price tag of the fixes has not been disclosed, but it undoubtedly added millions to the already hefty $700 million cost of the Vdara development. It was an expensive lesson in the unintended consequences of unconventional design. The Millennium Tower, a 58-story luxury condo high-rise in downtown San Francisco, has gained notoriety not for its opulent amenities or stunning views, but for its alarming propensity to sink and tilt. This towering trouble has mired its developers and the city in a quagmire of costly repairs, legal battles, and recriminations. The Millennium Tower's woes began to surface in 2016 when it was revealed that the building had sunk 16 inches and tilted 2 inches to the northwest since its completion in 2009. By 2018, those figures had increased to 18 inches of sinking and 14 inches of tilting. Projections suggest the tower could ultimately sink as much as 31 inches, a staggering figure for a structure of its size. The source of the problem lies in the building's foundation. Unlike most high-rises in San Francisco, which are anchored to bedrock, the Millennium Tower's foundation consists of friction piles driven 60 to 90 feet into dense sand. This design decision, while not unprecedented, has proved inadequate to support the tower's immense weight, particularly given the soft, compressible soil beneath. Complicating matters further, the adjacent Transbay Transit Center construction project required extensive dewatering of the soil, which accelerated the Millennium Tower's sinking. The removal of groundwater caused the soil to compress, essentially pulling the rug out from under the tower's foundation. The consequences of this subsidence have been profound. Inside the building, residents have reported cracks in walls, floors that are perceptibly uneven, and doors and windows that no longer function properly. The sinking has also played havoc with the building's electrical and plumbing systems, requiring constant adjustments. But the real toll has been financial. The tower's luxury condos, once a coveted address, have seen their values plummet. Residents have filed multiple lawsuits against the developers and the city, alleging negligence and seeking hundreds of millions in damages. Insurance companies have largely refused to cover the losses, leading to a complex web of litigation. Meanwhile, the price tag for fixing the tower's tilt keeps climbing. An initial plan to install 52 new piles anchored to bedrock was estimated to cost around $100 million. But that figure quickly ballooned to over $500 million as the extent of the repairs became clear. The question of who will foot this staggering bill remains a matter of fierce legal dispute. For now, work is underway to stabilize the sinking skyscraper. But the process is painstakingly slow and not without risk. Each new pile must be carefully drilled through the existing foundation, a delicate operation that could potentially cause further damage. It's a high-stakes gamble to save a building that has become a symbol of hubris and miscalculation. San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. This $6.4 billion project, intended to provide a seismically robust replacement for the aging and vulnerable original span, has been marred by a series of costly design flaws, delays, and questionable oversight that have tarnished its promise as a shining example of 21st century engineering. The troubles began early in the construction process when it was discovered that the new bridge's 525-foot-tall tower had a serious problem. The massive bolts used to anchor the tower's seismic stabilizers had been made of a metal alloy prone to cracking, a flaw that could have catastrophic consequences in a major earthquake. Caltrans, the state agency overseeing the project, was forced to undertake an extensive and expensive retrofit, replacing the defective bolts at a cost of over $25 million. But the bolt fiasco was just the beginning. As construction progressed, concerns emerged about the integrity of the bridge's main cable, a critical component that supports the entire suspended roadway. Engineers discovered that the cable's steel strands were rusting at an alarming rate due to exposure to rainwater during construction. Caltrans downplayed the issue, insisting the corrosion was manageable, but independent experts warned that the cable's long-term strength could be significantly compromised. Adding to the project's woes were revelations of shoddy workmanship and lax oversight. Whistleblowers alleged that inferior-grade steel had been used in some parts of the bridge and that quality control tests had been falsified. Inspectors found numerous instances of cracked welds, misaligned components, and other defects that required costly repairs. Critics blamed Caltrans for inadequate supervision of its contractors and for prioritizing speed over quality. The mounting problems led to significant delays and cost overruns. The bridge, originally scheduled to open in 2007, didn't see its first traffic until 2013. The final price tag, initially pegged at $1.4 billion, ultimately soared to $6.4 billion, a nearly five-fold increase. The escalating costs triggered a political firestorm, with lawmakers and the public demanding accountability for the project's mismanagement. 20 Fenchurch Street. Affectionately known as the walkie-talkie due to its distinctive shape, has been making headlines not just for its bold design, but for the way it has been turning the surrounding streets into a virtual frying pan. The 37-story building, designed by architect Raphael Vignoli, features a unique curved glass facade that bulges outward as it rises. This striking design choice, while certainly eye-catching, has had an unintended and rather startling consequence. The concave shape of the south-facing wall acts as a giant parabolic reflector, concentrating the sun's rays onto a small area of the street below. The effect has been likened to a giant magnifying glass, creating a beam of intense heat that can reach temperatures of up to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. This solar spotlight has been causing quite a bit of mischief on the streets of central London. In 2013, shortly after the building's completion, the focused rays melted parts of a parked car, warped bicycle seats, and even fried the doormat of a nearby barbershop. The scorching glare has also proven to be a hazard for pedestrians, with some reporting singed hair and blistered skin after unwittingly stepping into the beam. The area around the building has been dubbed the Death Ray by the local media, a moniker that has stuck despite the developers' best efforts to downplay the issue. The source of the problem lies in a confluence of factors. The walkie-talkie's bulging shape, while striking, essentially creates a concave mirror that focuses light. This effect is exacerbated by the highly reflective nature of the building's glass facade. Additionally, the tower's orientation means that the south-facing wall catches the sun at the optimal angle for maximum reflection during the summer months. To mitigate the searing situation, the building's developers were forced to take action. In 2014, they installed a permanent sunshade on the south facade, consisting of horizontal aluminum fins that break up the reflection. This retrofit, which cost a reported $10 million, about $13 million, has largely succeeded in dissipating the death ray, much to the relief of local shopkeepers and pedestrians. Jeddah Tower. Conceived as a record-breaking marvel that would stand as the world's first kilometer-high building, has instead become a stark reminder of the risks and challenges inherent in reaching for the sky. The project, originally dubbed the Kingdom Tower, was announced in 2011 as the centerpiece of Jeddah Economic City, a sprawling development on the Red Sea coast. With a planned height of 1,007 meters, 304 feet, the tower was designed to surpass Dubai's Burj Khalifa as the tallest building in the world, a symbolic assertion of Saudi Arabia's growing economic clout. Construction began in 2013, with the building's distinctive three-petal footprint taking shape at the base. The complex design, by American architect Adrian Smith, called for a tapered form that would minimize wind loads while still allowing for usable floor space at the top. The tower's exterior was to be clad in a mix of glass and stainless steel, with a distinctive crescent-shaped pinnacle housing a massive observation deck. But as the tower began to climb, so too did the challenges and setbacks. The first signs of trouble emerged in 2015 when the main contractor, the Saudi bin Laden Group, was hit with a series of financial and legal issues. The company, one of the kingdom's largest construction firms, saw its assets frozen and its top managers arrested as part of a wide-ranging anti-corruption crackdown. The turmoil at Bin Laden Group led to significant delays and cash flow problems for the Jeddah Tower project. Work on the site slowed to a crawl as the company struggled to pay its subcontractors and suppliers. By 2018, with the tower's core standing at just over 60 stories, construction had effectively ground to a halt. The project's woes were compounded by broader economic headwinds in Saudi Arabia. The drop in global oil prices had put a squeeze on the kingdom's finances, forcing a reevaluation of major infrastructure investments. The Jeddah Economic Company, the tower's developer, found itself grappling with a funding shortfall as investors grew skittish about the project's viability. As of 2023, the fate of the Jeddah Tower remains uncertain, while the developer maintains that construction will resume once the financing issues are resolved. Many observers are skeptical. The longer the delay stretches on, the more the project risks becoming a white elephant, a half-finished monument to overreach and miscalculation. The costs of the stalled construction are already staggering. Estimates put the total investment to date at around $2 billion, with at least another $1 billion required to complete the tower. The reputational damage has been significant as well, with the unfinished skeleton standing as a highly visible reminder of the project's struggles. Hotel of Doom. the Ryugyong Hotel in Pyongyang, North Korea. Rising like a massive concrete pyramid on the city's skyline, this ill-fated project has earned the ominous moniker Hotel of Doom, a name that seems all too fitting given its troubled history. Construction on the Ryugyong Hotel began in 1987, during a period of relative economic stability for North Korea. The vision was grand, a 105-story, 3,000-room hotel that would be the tallest hotel in the world, and a symbol of the country's might and modernity. The design, by the North Korean architect Baekdusan Architects and Engineers, called for a striking triangular shape, with 3 wings converging at a pinnacle crowned by 5 revolving restaurants. But almost from the start, the project was beset by challenges. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 deprived North Korea of crucial economic support, leading to widespread famine and a severe economic crisis. Construction on the hotel halted in 1992, with the structure standing at around 1,082 feet, 330 meters, an impressive height, but still far short of the planned 1,083 feet, 330 meters. For the next 16 years, the unfinished hotel stood as a hulking monument to overreach and economic dysfunction. The bare concrete structure, without windows, fixtures, or any interior finishing, loomed over Pyongyang like a dystopian skyscraper. The North Korean government, embarrassed by the eyesore, edited it out of official city photographs and even removed it from maps. In 2008, in a surprising turn of events, construction on the hotel resumed. The Egyptian telecommunications company Orascom, which was launching a cellular network in North Korea, agreed to fund the completion of the hotel's exterior in exchange for the right to operate the network. Over the next several years, the hotel's facade was clad in mirrored glass, giving it a sleek, modern appearance that belied its still unfinished interior. But the glossy exterior proved to be little more than a cosmetic band-aid on a deeply troubled project. Orascom's involvement ended in 2012, with the company reporting that it had invested $180 million in the hotel, a staggering sum for a building that remained entirely unusable. Analysts estimate that completing the hotel's interior could cost another $2 billion, a figure that seems impossibly out of reach for the cash-strapped North Korean government. The AON Center. From the towering folly of Pyongyang's pyramid, we turn our gaze now to the gleaming streets of Chicago, where another skyscraper found itself grappling with an expensive and embarrassing cladding crisis. The AON Center, a 83-story office tower in the heart of the Windy City's business district, stood tall and proud with its distinctive facade of Carrara marble, until the stone began to crack and fall, posing a serious safety hazard and setting the stage for one of the most costly recladding projects in history. The AON Center, originally known as the Standard Oil Building, was completed in 1973 and at the time was the tallest marble-clad building in the world. The sleek white stone, quarried from the same region in Italy as the marble used by Michelangelo, was chosen for its luxurious appearance and supposed durability. However, it soon became clear that the 1.5-inch thick marble panels were ill-suited to Chicago's harsh freeze-thaw cycles. Within a year of the building's completion, the marble began to bow and warp, creating unsightly bulges on the facade. By the late 1980s, the situation had become critical. The marble panels were cracking and splitting, and large pieces began to break off and plummet to the streets below. In one terrifying incident in 1990, a slab the size of a dining room table crashed into the building's plaza, shattering on impact. Miraculously, no one was injured, but it was a stark wake-up call about the severity of the problem. Faced with an unacceptable safety risk and potential liability nightmare, the building's owners were forced to take drastic action. In 1992, they embarked on an ambitious plan to completely replace the 43,000 marble panels with granite, a far more durable stone that could better withstand Chicago's extreme weather. The project, which took 3 years to complete, was a monumental undertaking that required workers to rappel down the building's facade to remove the old marble and install the new granite. The costs of the recladding were staggering. The total bill came to around $80 million, making it one of the most expensive building restorations ever undertaken.